All right, what's going on, guys? This is Rob, and let's talk about Obi Wan Kenobi episode number 3. Specifically, let's talk about the duel between Darth Vader and Obi Wan Kenobi, because I feel like this is a big point of division among Star Wars fans. It seems pretty divisive. I was doing a little bit of reading online after I saw the episode, and people either loved it or they hated it. Not a whole lot of people are in between. I'm in the camp where I loved it, because this highlighted just one incredible aspect of these two guys, which is how far they've fallen. And that's what's so incredible about this. I mean, this fight really is, by all standards of measurement, a battle just between two old fogies, right? Like Obi Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader, who is Anakin Skywalker, minus like 60% of his power. I'm just throwing out a random number just to get the point across, but nowhere near as powerful as he used to be. Comparable to Obi Wan Kenobi in a lot of different ways in terms of abilities. And so this is one of the things that I think really makes this episode so fantastic. Honestly, because nothing else does, right? Like, what else happens in this episode? Like, they fight some stormtroopers, and like some chick shows up dressed as a Sith officer and is like, we're kind of helping to smuggle people to safety. And like, that's it, right? There's a droid that's there that I kind of wish had been HK-47. And like, that's really all you have, right? There's really nothing else. And it's Princess Leia running away yet again, only to presumably be captured, maybe kind of, I guess, whatever, at the end of the episode. So here's the thing, right? Here's like the meat and potatoes of this. This illustrates that the Force is not some infinite source of power. It is, but it can be diminished in an individual person. And this is something that, unless you're familiar with the continuity outside of, well, really the expanded universe, to be quite frank, it's not something that you'd readily be aware of, right? So let's talk about that for a second. Let's talk about the diminishing ability to use the Force. So there's two different aspects of this, right? There is what's seemingly the natural progression, which is to say, over time, Jedi and Sith, their ability to use the Force has just gotten weaker over time, which is the reason why, as cool and powerful as Palpatine is, I would say in the face of like Darth Bane or anybody like that, guy would get absolutely massacred, right? He wouldn't stand a chance. You look at somebody like Anakin Skywalker. Sure, he's really powerful. Exar Kun would crush that guy, right? I mean, I stand firm, right? I will die on this mountain that those guys would crush any of the modern Jedi, save for maybe Legends Luke, right? Luke from the old Legends series. But even then, I think it's a bit of a stretch. Having said that, there's also the diminishing ability to use the Force during what's basically the prequel series. Now, the reason why that happened is not really a natural progression of things. It was actually manipulation, external manipulation from a couple different places. As I understand it, the first one, which was covered in the book of Tarkin, is basically that the Jedi Temple on Coruscant was built over an old Sith shrine, and that was used by Palpatine to basically flood the Jedi Temple, for lack of a better phrase, with the dark side of the Force, basically clouding everything, right? It was quite literally like filling the building with fog, right? With like, smoke or something like that. Nobody can see anything that's going on. That's kind of what the temple was doing, or what the shrine was doing on a more metaphysical level regarding the Force. The other part of it is that Palpatine actually had a device that would mask his Force signature from the other Jedi, which is the reason why, unless he just kind of said something that seemed a little weird, right? Like, that sounds like something a Sith would say. The Jedi wouldn't really have any knowledge that he was a Sith Lord. I mean, there were a couple times, right? You guys remember there was some statement he made and Yoda gave him the stink eye, and it was like, okay, so obviously there's something going on with this guy. The Jedi might pick up on it. It's like, nope, never mind, they're idiots. Like, they're never going to figure it out. But honestly, it was because that little device that Palpatine had that just basically masked that. You would think just because he looked suspicious. I mean, the guy looked shady, right? Like, it's almost like you don't even need to be a Jedi, right? The Jedi are like, all right, things are a little off here. Let's just hire a random detective. And the random detective is just like, okay, I figured it out. That guy over there, that Chancellor, who is obviously a bad guy because he just looks the part, that guy's the Sith Lord you're hunting for, right? I mean, like, I'm surprised you didn't figure this out on your own, right? But nonetheless, right, it's just one of those things. But again, when it comes to Jedi and Sith, they just kind of naturally lose the ability to use the Force as time goes on, or have naturally become weaker as time has gone on. But this is doubly so with somebody like Obi Wan Kenobi, because one of the things to understand about the Force is it's like a muscle. It will atrophy if you go long enough without using it, because having the Force, it's one thing to be able to tap into the Force, right? To be able to say like, I am a force sensitive person. There's a lot of people out there who are force sensitives. Anakin Skywalker as a little kid was force sensitive. But just because a person can use the force does not mean that they are a capable force user. They have to be trained to do that. It's a skill set. And that if you don't use that skill set, after a while, you'll start forgetting things. It's like being a bodybuilder, right? I mean, you could have perfect squat form, but if you go on long enough, eventually you'll lose that form. You won't be able to squat as well. You could potentially injure yourself. Now, there may be some kind of muscle memory that goes into that, but the force is a finicky thing. And so there's nothing to really even guarantee that if Obi Wan Kenobi were to start tapping into the force again, then suddenly, he becomes Celine Dion, right? It's all coming back to me now. You know what I mean? Like, there's no guarantee it's going to be that way. And so what you saw here in this episode was a great depiction of what happens when you've got Obi Wan Kenobi, who is lost, or his connection to the Force has been drastically diminished, facing off against Darth Vader, who is a fraction or has a fraction of the power that Anakin Skywalker had. Now, the next thing goes into like the presence, right? Like when they were there and what they were doing. So I feel like one of the best things that highlights this is when Darth Vader shows up on this little backwater planet and just starts hunting for Obi-Wan, right? If this was Anakin Skywalker in episode 3, he would have found Obi-Wan like that, right? When he was literally kind of hiding over there, he would have just been like, there you are, and just force grabbed him or something like that, done something to indicate he knows exactly where he is, right? Pinpoint his location perfectly. But he didn't do that because his connection to the Force is diminished. Instead, he just walked through the town, knocked some boxes out of the way to show that he knew there were people hiding there, but he didn't know that they were Obi Wan Kenobi, and then like force choked a couple folks because Darth Vader's not as powerful as Anakin was. If that was Anakin Skywalker, if that was like pre-Vader Anakin Skywalker, he would have killed everybody, and probably just in just one grandiose motion, right? Just like use the Force and just shut down the brains of everybody or something crazy, right? It just would have been like, damn, that's how much more powerful, that's like how powerful he's become now with the dark side. That's kind of the irony of like Darth Vader and the whole Anakin Skywalker dichotomy when it comes to Emperor Palpatine, is because sure, the bargain that was made between Palpatine and Anakin is, well, we'll find some way to save the life of Padme. But the unofficial bargain that was struck by Anakin was the dark side of the Force is more powerful than the light side of the Force. And he even made that statement to Obi-Wan at one point, right? Like, the dark side is more powerful. Just unbridled use of the Force, no limitations, use it however you want to, just go out and have a good time, right? That's basically how it works, right? You don't have you're not limited by the code of the Jedi, using the Force only for defense, never for offense, that kind of thing, right? It's just use it as you please, and hopefully you can live, right? And that's basically it. But the whole thing that happened here is when Anakin became Darth Vader, he became weaker. So that's kind of the funny thing, right? That's kind of the funny situation that you look at there. Had Anakin Skywalker, let's say, for example, he had successfully killed Obi Wan Kenobi on Mustafar and had been elevated to the position of Darth Vader, he would have become drastically, it would have been insane how powerful he'd become, especially when you read the Darth Vader comics and you find out that he's just doing things secretly, right? If the Force Unleashed were brought into continuity, like his own apprentice, Galen Merrick, right, going through and having his own Jedi apprentice or his own Sith apprentice who was just crazy powerful, doing things in secret, Anakin would have found sources of power out there that would have helped him or elevated him to a position beyond Palpatine. He would have killed Palpatine and then taken his place and then taken his own apprentice, right? So that would have been well within the power of Anakin. Such as it is, his connection, his power is drastically diminished. And that goes into the lightsaber battles, right? A lot of people are kind of looking at that and they're just like, I mean, these two guys just look totally enfeebled, right? I mean, they're just these old dudes, essentially, or at least one whose connection to the Force is severely diminished due to his machine components, and the other one whose connection is diminished just due to a lack of use. These guys are just kind of fumbling and bumbling around with lightsabers in the desert. And it's like, of course they are. They're nowhere near as powerful as they used to be, right? I mean, that's like saying, look at how they fight in episode 4. God, man, those guys, this is not how lightsaber duels are supposed to be. No, it kind of is, right? Because what you saw here segues perfectly into episode 4. And it's a great way to answer that question. How do you go from Obi Wan Kenobi and pre-Vader Anakin Skywalker in episode 3 with these just incredible ballets in terms of their lightsaber duels and so on and so forth to how they are now? The reality is that was all viable because of the Force. That having these crazy displays in terms of movements, being able to move so fluidly and all that kind of stuff, that's all Force stuff, right? Being able to utilize all those different lightsaber forms is because of the Force. when you take that away, of course, they're basically just a couple of people who are just swinging at each other in the desert, right? They literally look like LARPers, right? Just live action role playing. They look like Star Wars guy, right? Just out there in a field fighting against each other. And I loved seeing it because that's exactly what I expected to see from two guys whose connection to the Force is drastically diminished. That even with Darth Vader using the lightsaber one-handed, it's like, okay, so he's trying to capture the glory of days gone by. But it's obvious he's not Anakin Skywalker anymore. He doesn't have the same level of power as Anakin Skywalker anymore. The funny thing is, it looks like Anakin just hasn't figured that out yet. He still thinks he's as capable as he ever was. He hasn't learned the huge limitations that are imposed on him now because he's more machine than man, twisted and evil. So it's a cool thing. But I loved that fight. I loved the way it looked. It just perfectly highlighted how far these two guys have fallen in their relation to the Force and their capabilities by virtue of the Force. So, with that being said, guys, we're going to bring this to an end. Let me know what you think down in the comments section about the whole Episode 3, Darth Vader, all that kind of stuff. Let me know what you all think, and I will catch you all later. Peace.